A slight preview of SWAC Media Day because it is today on Wednesday. I got four things that I'm looking for. And probably the biggest one of all is what did James Colzie learn in year one? Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusive. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Did y'all like my little RVD points at the beginning? Some of my wrestling fans might have liked that. RVD. HBCU. But anyway, we're gonna wrap up today's episode with a look at Tennessee State, who they don't believe in letting things grieve. They move on from their coaches very quickly when they leave because it seems like they're already about to hire a new men's basketball coach. Segment 1 and 2 is a two-part. It's a double header. Both are going to have two parts within it. So we're a little bit divided in today's episode, but it's all about SWAC Media Day. It's Wednesday. I wanted to see a few things, four things I wanted to see out of today's event, and I'm going to give them to you, hopefully, before you're able to watch SWAC Media Day, so you have something that you are looking for. And today's episode is going to kick off with FAMU because I'd say after Jackson State, they are on the short list of teams that we want to see more than anyone else. And it's not about whether they succeed or fail. We're not looking for a specific outcome, or maybe you are. I'm not, but maybe you are. I think that there is a certain level of intrigue around FAMU because of how poorly that they performed last year after coming off of a Celebration Bowl victory. Now, I think that that should have been kind of expected, at least as a possibility. I understand thinking it wasn't going to happen, but I think if you were being reasonable, you understood a step back was likely on the way. You lose Willie Simmons, one of, if not the best coach in that conference, probably the best coach in that conference. Honestly, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You lost the best coach in that conference. And then you replace him with James Colzie, who is stepping in for the first time as a head coach on a collegiate level. I think he was I want to say, it might have been a Canadian college, but on the FCS level, let's say that. I think that he was a head coach somewhere else, and I believe it was in Canada. But as far as stepping into this role, he was very fresh. He didn't have a lot of experience. He wasn't like Willie Simmons, who came over to the Rattlers after multiple years at PV. So it was a little bit different. I think growing pains should have been expected. The reason I bring that up is not only to say, look at what FAMU did last year, look at the intrigue, but to also say that James Colzie performed how I expected. There was going to be some good. There was going to be some bad. There was going to be some wins. There was going to be some losses. And that's what we saw. But I want to know, what did he learn? SWAC Media Day, or media days in general, are pretty buttoned up a lot of times, at least the SWAC and MEAC. I don't pay attention to a lot of other conferences' media days, but the SWAC and MEAC, they don't really give you much. It's a whole lot of coach speak. It's a whole lot of, well, we're just looking forward to the next game type of answers. And I'll say this. This is a question that you can answer fully. This is a question that you can answer truthfully. And this is an answer that you can, or question you can answer very directly. And you can do that at SWAC Media Day. I want to know, what did he get from last year in his first year as FAMU's head coach? Because that may get an idea of what he's looking to press in 2025. These are the type of conversations I hope to see at SWAC Media Day. And speaking of conversations I hope to see, this one needs to be asked. And like I said, we get a lot of coach speak. So when it comes to quarterback battles, you're not going to get much. Spoiler alert, there's 2 quarterback battles on my list. I'm starting off with FAMU because you got 29 quarterbacks on the FAMU roster. James Colzie can tell me the plan at quarterback, at least how they plan to get to the number 1 guy. I'm not asking for who's in the lead, but you don't have 2 players. You got, I think it's like 6, 7 players that you're bringing in. Oh my gosh, the youngins on TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok, but I know about the whole 6-7 thing. It always hits me, when you have little siblings, you think about that kind of stuff. Anywho, the point is, you got a ton of quarterbacks in that roster. On that roster, you have a ton of quarterbacks. I just want to know, what are you going to do with all of them? How do you plan on finding your answer? What is the plan for the quarterback battle? Like I said, people don't want to give these answers up because you don't want to reveal anything. All these coaches are afraid of revealing anything. I don't think that you have to be revealing. I don't think you have to be secretive to not be revealing when you're talking about the FAMU quarterback situation. I don't, because you have enough quarterbacks for you to sit here and tell me or tell Jay and tell Tiffany, yeah, we plan on narrowing it down to 3 by the time we get to fall camp. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. And I think that this is a question that almost has to be asked. Of everything that's on my list, these are the 2 things that I feel like must be asked. These are the 2 things I feel like must be discussed. Because James Colzie going from year 1 to year 2 is a layup of a question. Layup of a question. You're going to hear something along the lines of what's different. What did you learn? What are you looking to change? FAMU didn't have the success. What needs to change? Like, you're going to hear some variation of last year to this year. You're going to hear that for every single coach. But a coach going into his 2nd year as a leader of the team, that's almost mandatory. So I expect to hear that. I also think it'll be equally malpractice if we don't ask about the FAMU quarterback situation. And I'm not just talking about people who talk to the coaches on the side after they get off the stage. I think that this should be a question that is aired on ESPN. I do. Like, when you're up there and you're broadcasting it on the natural or on the national scale, ESPN Plus, this should be one of the things that is asked, because FAMU has actually had the best quarterback in the conference the last 2 years. Jeremy Musa, Daniel Richardson, both first team all SWAC. Musa was the offensive player of the year. Richardson was just first team all SWAC. But I don't think that Richardson gets enough credit because FAMU wasn't all that great. But Richardson was very talented to me. He was my favorite quarterback in the conference in 2024. You're going from back-to-back first team all SWAC players. You should ask about the question mark at quarterback. And I think Colzie's answer should say that we have a million quarterbacks in the roster. I just hope after that, you then talk about what comes from it. What comes from it? Because I just can't help but want to know, how do you plan to go about this? Because to me, it feels like too many chefs in the kitchen. But I'm not a coach. I've never had to make this call. It's easy for me to sit here in the crib and talk to you about, hey, I think they need to do this, that, and the third with their quarterbacks. But I've never had to deal with the ramifications. I've never had to deal with the cut down process. I've never had to recruit 7 quarterbacks. I've never had to do any of it. But that's why I look to these things for some sort of insight. I can only give my opinion on what I'm educated on. My opinion comes sorely or severely. No, that's not the name. I don't know. I just call it solely. There we go. I call it brain fart. Crazy. But like, it comes solely from the things that have been presented to me. And what has been presented to me is that many quarterbacks in the room, too many. You can't have a good quarterback battle that way. But I want James Colzie to tell me, Darrion, that's not the case. This is how we're going to do it. We're right now sitting at 7. We hope to narrow it down to about 3 by the time fall practice comes around. As we get into the last week before the season, we hope that we have 2 players at most who are competing for this starting role. That's an acceptable answer. That's a thorough answer, and that is a direct, full answer. And it's not anything that's revealing. FAMU, James Colzie specifically can tell me exactly how they plan to run this quarterback battle by only using numbers and never giving a single name. To me, that is thorough. But it's not the only quarterback battle that I want to hear discussed on SWAC Media Day. There's going to be quite a few that we discuss, but I want to hear about Alabama A&M specifically. And I'm going to tell you why their situation and their scenario is unique from everyone else as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, I understand that the NBA is out. I understand that the NFL is out, but we're about to get preseason. If you're a real football head, you love football. You love football, so you love preseason. Doesn't matter. I love training camp. I love when they report to training camp because I know football is on the way. I love when they ain't got pads on yet. I love it all. So I can't wait to put some money down on FanDuel when preseason rolls around. It's a little bit risky. I actually would wait till the regular season. But sometimes you got to get it how you live. Maybe you want to put some money down on the WNBA. My girl Angel Reese has been going crazy. It makes me very happy to see the success that she has had. Whatever it is, tennis, UFC, WNBA, the NFL is right around the corner. MLB, you have everything you want. Just go to FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com. Use the code locked on, no code. You'll get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins and you're new to FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL. There's a big thing going on with the second round picks in the NFL draft, and Locked On NFL is going to make sure that you understand the situation and stay up to date on what everybody chooses to do. I know I want to see what my second round pick is going to do. Tyler Shuck. But here, we're rolling with SWAC Media Day conversation. Hopefully you're listening to this before it goes up. Maybe before you checked it out. Maybe you're on your way home. You didn't get a chance to check it out. Or maybe you're just going to Google things and you want to see if these things are being discussed. I appreciate you regardless. SWAC Media Day comes out 3 hours after I release this, 7 a.m. Central Time. They drop 10 a.m. Central Time, and it's going to go for a while. But anyway, that being said, I really want to see what is said about the Alabama A&M quarterback battle. There's not many sure things at QB in the SWAC. It just isn't. But there's only a handful of quarterbacks who actually brought, or a handful of teams who brought their quarterback. And Alabama A&M is one of them. What's interesting to me about Alabama A&M and the decision by Sam Shade to bring Cornelius Brown IV is that I don't think Cornelius Brown IV has the job secured. He may be the starter, but I don't necessarily think that he has that job absolutely locked down. I expect him to be competing with Mekhi Hagans. Now, I think I mentioned this on my episode where I'm talking about who was brought, the quarterbacks that were brought. I did this earlier, and I talked about Cornelius. And I said I think that Hagans has the inside track because of look when he was brought in. And I heard the responses. I wish we were doing Monday mailbags at the time. But one of the responses that I heard or read, two of the responses, was that, hey, I understand that Hagans has this higher profile, but if Maynard wasn't playing hot potato with Cornelius Brown and Xavier Langford, then we would have seen equal numbers from Brown that we saw from Hagans. I think that that's a really good point. It's not one that I'm here to refute. It's typically how I view quarterback additions after the spring is at worst a battle is on the way. Has that battle been decided? I highly doubt it. So I just didn't understand the decision to bring Cornelius Brown IV. I think that because Brown will be present, we can have conversations about the quarterback battle with the quarterback. Because Sam Shade is going to be there and he's a new head coach and there's a level of eyes that are on him, we will be asking him about the top position. I just want to know what went into the decision. The quarterback battle probably isn't done. Maybe he'll tell me that it is today. And if that's the case, it will be the lead topic on tomorrow's episode. If Sam Shade comes in and says Cornelius Brown IV is our starting quarterback, I will say that Cornelius Brown IV is our starting segment. Point blank, period. I know what tomorrow is going to entail. We're going to talk about some All-Americans. But if he says that that is the starter, I guarantee you that will be, I'm going to leave myself room for something crazy happening. But that will be a top 2 story coming out of SWAC Media Day. Period. So I really want to see what's going on there. I want to see what that conversation is like with Shade on stage, with Brown on stage. Hagens is in the mix. He just isn't present. He just isn't present. And that says a lot to me. As far as Miles, or excuse me, as far as Shade goes, he came over from Miles College, and I really liked what he did. I think that the parallels to Chennis Berry are present. He didn't have two back-to-back championships, so he wasn't as dominant in the SIAC, but he goes from a D2 HBCU to an FCS HBCU, stays within that same state. I think he has some of the same similar benefits as far as location and already knowing the lay of the land and people already knowing him. So the trust is there to recruit locally. I think that Barry and Shade both have, and Shade has that extra bonus of the commitment and the relation that runs deep in the state of Alabama for him. I think it's there. I don't want to compare him to Barry. I think that the comparison is natural. I'll draw some parallels, but I do not want to compare the two. I don't necessarily think that that's fair with everything that Barry achieved in his first year at South Carolina State. You're not expecting any first year coach to do that. So to place that comparison almost is to place an expectation. So that's why I won't do it. I'll just draw a little bit of parallels between the two because the connection is going to naturally be there. And speaking of coming from the Division II ranks, Valdosta State head coach Tremaine Jackson is now the Prairie View head coach. And this one is my most broad. There's nothing specific about it. I just want to know what he's going to say. I just want to know what is Tremaine Jackson going to say, because as buttoned up and as distinguished and as secretive as these events tend to be, because nobody wants to give anybody anything. They think that if you say, well, I like my offensive line, now everybody knows you have a good offensive line and we're going to be able to see this, that, and the third. Coaches want to be so secretive when it comes to this. It's hilarious. But when it comes to Tremaine Jackson, I think we're going to hear him say something. Not salacious, not dramatic, not shots being taken, though he has taken shots this year, though he has made strong declarations this year. The majority of what he has said has been all about how much he loves his team. And to me, this is a coach who, at the end of the day, is going to speak. There's certain coaches who are just going to speak. And I don't know if he's going to take this moment and be all reserved. Nothing he's done this offseason has told me that he'd be that way. Instead, what I'm feeling like is we're going to get somebody who is telling you exactly what he likes about his team. If he likes his running back room, this is what he feels like. I don't care if you know what I like because you can't stop me. That's what I feel like I get. That's the vibes I get from Tremaine Jackson. If I tell you that we have a really good shot at running the football, I'm going to line up and run the football at you. I don't care if you know it's coming because you can't stop it. That's the type of coach that he strikes me as. So I don't think he's going to have any problem saying this is where I think we're strong. No one's going to get up there and say this is where I think we're weak, but I don't think he's going to have a problem saying this is where I feel like I'm strong. That's me though. Now, as we push forward, as we push forward, we're going to take a look at Tennessee State because they already have their eyes on another head coach. Men's basketball is on the way. I'm sorry, Penny Collins. I thought they was going to go with an interim after you left, but they ain't even let your seat get cold before they started eyeing someone else. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times now. Thank you. As we wrap up today's episode, we're going to take a look at Tennessee State because they already have their eyes on a new men's basketball coach. This kind of surprises me. Now, CBS Sports is that's ugly. ESPN's, NFL Networks, Locked On HBCUs. CBS Sports reporter John Rothstein, he reports that Tennessee State is looking at Memphis assistant coach Nolan Smith to be their head coach. I want to leave a little bit of meat on the bone so that when I want to leave a little bit of meat on the bone so that if this happens, we're not just regurgitating points. I will give my biggest talking points on why I think that this hire has potential, which is what I always try to look at. I always try to look at what's the potential of this hire, especially when it's a assistant going to a head coach. If it's a head coach going to head coach, all right, I can look at it a little bit more concrete, and I probably wouldn't use the word potential as much, though it is still potential. When we're talking assistant, this is purely potential. But the thing that sticks out more than anything else is that I don't think that Tennessee State actually believes in interim head coaches. They've had two great opportunities to have interim coaches, and they passed up on it. Now, I don't love going into the season with an interim coach either. So listen, Tennessee State, you got my respect for this. You have my respect for not going the interim route in football and not going the interim route in basketball. That being said, I was ready to give them the pass on both fronts, especially in football. See, I feel like sometimes you want to go through a thorough search and you want to have all of these coaches at your disposal. And they said, we're not worrying about that. We're going to go through a thorough search with who is already at our disposal. When it came to football, March 9th, you're looking at Eddie George saying, yeah, I'm gone. I'm going to Bowling Green. This is what I'm going to do. Cool. March 23rd, they're announcing that Reggie Barlow is the new head coach of Tennessee State. That's 14 days, 2 weeks. Now, I applauded that because I'm sitting here like, yeah, look, most coaches are gone in January if they're leaving. Most times you're going to have to replace a coach relatively early after the season is over. If you're really good, January, right? Because now you've gone through the FCS playoffs. You've done everything that you need to. Early January is typically when a coach is going to leave. So when Eddie George didn't leave till March, I'm like, dang, you were so behind the eight ball. Your process is delayed. Most people are going to start 2 months before you. The fact that your process is starting around the time that everybody else is starting spring practice, just go ahead and go with an interim, come back in 2026 and start finding your coach at the end of at the beginning of that calendar year. Forget all of that. We're going to get Reggie Barlow. And that was a splash. That was a huge hire. That's a guy that I expect or I accept going into your team while you have spring practice going on. And I thought he handled himself very well. And he showed why he's saying, hey, I could take this job in March. I tweak spring practice. Doesn't make sense with how our situation is. We're going to do it this way. That's a leader. That's someone who could who can step in and take on that role. Now you're looking at losing Penny Collins on June 30th. Happy birthday to your boy. You're losing Penny Collins at the end of June. I sit here and record this on the night of July 15th. They're already eyeing Nolan Smith as their new head coach. That's 2 weeks. Now, I don't know how long you have to do this. I don't know how long an interview process to be a head coach takes. I don't know. I don't know what the checks and balances are. I don't go through that many, right? And I don't go through the inner workings of that many. I've seen a ton of hirings, and I don't pay attention to how long they take. But Penny leaving at the end of June was also putting you behind the eight ball. You name an interim head coach. I think you named the interim both times, but you decided not to go with them. Okay. You decide not to go with them. I can understand that. I can accept that. But yeah, that's interesting to me. You don't wait at all. You don't go with the interim, even when the opportunity presents itself, even when you may have better luck waiting. They say we're going to move on. I was watching a show today and someone called their ex a serial monogamist. That's Tennessee State. We not hopping out of relationships to be in temporary anythings. We hopping out of relationships and we getting in new relationships. That's what Tennessee State has shown me with their two decisions, right? It'd be interesting if anybody knows what show that is. That was a very specific line, and I was watching it on streaming platforms that I will not name because they do not pay. But I don't want to get too repetitive with this conversation, so I'll tell you the two things that I like. I like that his experience as a coach at Duke exists. I love the 6 years that he spent at Duke, because it just shows the ability to develop quickly. I'll get into that in depth because I do think this is going to happen. Rothstein says that it's not official, but they're working towards an agreement. And then the other thing that I like is that he comes from Memphis, not as just a youth or anything, but he he was a coach at the University of Memphis. That brings in state ties, and that also brings in the being under Penny Collins, not Penny Collins, Penny Hardaway. It goes being under Penny Hardaway, and to me, that's a little bit of media frenzy. You've been at Duke as a player, you've been at Duke as a coach, and you've been under Penny Hardaway. That is three media giants that I ain't gonna say giants for Hardaway, but you probably get a lot more attention at Memphis due to it. So I think that he should be familiar with any sort of media scrutiny. And then, so I'll say this: the last thing I'll point out when it comes to Smith is his claim to fame as a player. He was the offensive player, or he was the player of the year for the ACC in his senior year. He was a part of Duke's championship team in his junior year. So he has seen success as an individual. He has seen success as a team. He's seen success at the highest state. And he's also been around this. Coming from Duke means a lot to me. It means the way you handle yourself in basketball, it should be reflective of the way we look at Duke University. But I'll be interested. I think this is going to happen as soon as this week. It could happen as soon as this week, maybe early next week. I don't expect we go through next week's lineup of shows without saying Nolan Smith is either hired or he is moving on or he's staying at Memphis. I just don't think that we go another week without a true decision. So we'll see. Whenever it happens, we'll talk about it. Tomorrow, we'll talk about some of the takeaways from SWAC Media Day, as well as possibly some All-Americans, but definitely some takeaways from SWAC Media Day. In the meantime, in between time, until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.